You're 60 years old, married, and you're still working, and you've built up $2 million in your 401k, and you may be asking yourself the question, even though I'm still working, do Roth conversions or the idea of a Roth IRA make sense? That's what we're going to look at with our video today. Hello, I'm John Vandergriff. I'm one of the owners and the wealth planning team lead here at Blue Ridge Wealth Planners, where we help people answer questions very much like this one in the process of building a holistic plan for their retirement, whether they're in retirement or preparing for retirement like this couple. We want to help them be able to resolve all the issues and really try to help them make the best decisions that they can, considering their unique financial situation. So as we look at this, you know, the start of this conversation is a part of a bigger piece where what I'm going to do for our purposes today is really try to skip to more of the tax conversation. But as we look at this, you know, you can't just do tax planning in a silo. We've got to make sure that we are considering what we're converting, how those investments need to be considered, what is the impact of income now and in the future, but also making sure that we tie all these things together, built on a foundation of your objectives, covering income, investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy, because all of these pieces are going to come together and have a lot of overlap that really need to be planned for together and coordinated, not just done in silos. So with that said, I want to look at the details of our situation here because we've got two 60-year-olds. Their plan is to work an additional 5 years from where they are right now. Like a lot of our clients, they're wanting to bridge that gap between where they are and the beginning of Medicare without having to think about health insurance and things outside of Medicare. So as we look at that, they are currently bringing in $120,000 of gross income, and this is before deductions, and then they are contributing of that $120,000, $18,000 a year to traditional 401ks, much like many of you probably are to this point. So as we look at their needs in retirement, they need $90,000 of net income both today and in retirement. They've done a lot of work to get debt free, so we're kind of trying to keep lifestyle relatively the same, whether it's now or 5 years from now, and obviously factoring in inflation in that total as well. And as we look at their assets, they are very 401k or pre-tax heavy, with $2 million in 401ks and really $80,000 that's built up in bank cash. So not a lot of outside assets, not a lot of tax diversification. If we go back to our sheet here and just really focus on the tax side of this, we will see, you know, annual income right now at $120,000. We know based on where our tax brackets are today that if we're looking at, you know, our total income of $120,000, you know, and then they would be able to actually deduct some from that. But their top dollar today is in the 12% tax bracket, because that bracket will go with standard deductions up to $123,500. So as we look at this, their top tax rate today is 12%. Pre-tax, as we said, is $2 million now. After tax is the $80,000 that they have in their bank, and currently no money inside of Roth accounts like a Roth IRA, Roth 401k, or properly structured life insurance plan, all of which get tax-free accumulation, and if handled appropriately, tax-free withdrawal. So as we look at this, we've done a lot of videos to justify why and when conversions make sense. And the moral of that story is whenever you can leave the account or go into the account at the lowest percentage of taxes, that's the time that you want to take advantage of either Roth contributions or Roth conversion. So as we look at it, you know, again, today we said with kind of their income as a starting place of $120,000, you know, if they were making traditional contributions to a 401k, they would technically deduct that $18,000 and would be at $102,000 of taxable income, which still puts them in the 12% tax bracket. You know, as we compare that in the future, you know, with that level of income in 2026, which is technically taking 2017's brackets and reverting back to those in 26, if nothing changes from the way it is now, their 12% top dollar would actually jump up to 15%. So 25% tax increase on those dollars up to a similar dollar range. And again, with inflation factored in, depending on how much inflation went up with those brackets, could teeter into the 25% bracket, depending on raises or different things that they could get in that last 5 years of work. And then as we look at this, I don't know a lot about the future, but I don't know that we're going to stop tax increase at where brackets were in 26. The last time that we had noticeably higher taxes than we've experienced now was in 1981. You notice that if you go back to the top bracket here today, that is 37%. 1981, that top bracket was almost double where we are right now. But as we adjust these, and these are in today's dollars, even though it's 1981's brackets, all of these are adjusted for inflation with standard deductions. You know, their top dollar of income today would be noticeably higher than what it is now, almost triple at 32%. So as we look at this, you know, depending on what the tax environment looks like later, will drive a lot of the conversations that we need to have about conversions. But we don't want to get the cart before the horse, because we need to really examine two things. The first of which being contributions. Because as we go back to our example there, you know, if we've got this couple and they're contributing $18,000 a year into their 401ks, we don't want to be dumping that into traditional options and then doing conversions, because you're kind of emptying one bucket but filling it back up on the backside of this. So we want to examine first, does it make sense for them to be able to take their contributions and deposit those into a Roth account instead of a traditional account of their 401k? So big question that you have to ask your HR department or your plan administrator for your 401k is, does your 401k have a Roth 401k component, or the ability to contribute into a Roth 401k? Because again, as we look at this today, if you are under 50, you still get the exact same contribution maximums that you do with the regular 401k of $23,000. And then if you're over 50, like this couple, they could technically put in $30,500 a year into the Roth side, just like they can the traditional side. And as we look at it, going back to, you know, our brackets here, whether they contribute that $18,000 in to the 401k, they're going to deduct it and avoid paying 12%. But based on all the numbers that we looked at, I think 12% is the least opportunity they're going to have to pay taxes on this money. So as we look at that contribution, I would recommend in this particular case, $18,000 of contribution go to the Roth 401k so that we can create some tax diversification, but also essentially pay the lowest tax percentage on this money that we may ever get the chance to pay on these dollars. Because again, we do have a 10% bracket, but based on the way that their Social Security was structured, which all totaled would be a little over $5,000 a month, with what they need from this money to live on in retirement, there's essentially no chance they're going to be in a position to pay, in my opinion, less than 12%. So as we look at this, we've got to kind of divide the conversation and make sure that we understand, while we're still working with earned income, we do have conversions that we can do, but we don't want to miss out on the ability to make contributions at a greater rate. And this couple may decide to actually take some bank funds or disposable income and increase the amount of contributions that they're making into the Roth side greater than the $18,000, and then just lower their paycheck. Again, as long as they're able to cover all the things they need to do, it's really about manipulating your cash flow to make sure that you can make the best decisions. And if you can do that without increasing your taxable income, then that can be a win. So as we look at this, now we transition to the topic here of conversions. Well, we know if they were at $120,000 of income, so we're assuming that they made the contributions. So this is not deductible, you know, but again, you'll have standard deductions that can come off. They would have, you know, their top dollar be at 12%, even though it's only $3,000. Again, that would be a conversion that could make sense. Then, depending on how much taxes that they wanted to work and how much of that $2 million they wanted to whittle down, you know, they would have essentially about $100,000, a little over 100 in the 22% bracket to pay taxes on, and then an additional, you know, not quite 200,000, but a decent chunk of change that they could do in the 24% bracket. So again, you know, we're looking at an example of conversions happening at 12, 22, or potentially 24. depending on how much taxable income they want to show here, versus those brackets as we stack them up in the future being at 15, 25, and 28, and the 26, or, as we look at it, 32, 37, or 43, depending on how much taxable income you show based on 1981. So as we look at this, my large picture, and obviously there's a lot of things that we would need to look at for this, for your individual, would be to consider going into the 22, maybe the 24. I don't know that we have enough evidence that makes sense to recommend them going higher than that, just because based on the amount of money that they need from this, factoring in inflation, they may not go much above the 25% bracket on any of these dollars if they get there. And again, that's assuming that the taxes never changed from what we know on paper, ever leaving this 2026 scenario as we look at it. So again, a lot of the job with tax strategies like this is trying to make decisions based on historical information. What do we feel good about no matter what's happening? But also trying to make the best decision with each tax dollar that we have inside of these pre-tax accounts. Because most of the time when we have conversations with people about conversions, the thing that we have to look at is obviously where is our income now, but what will that income be forced to be at some point in the future? And so I always like to look at if there are no changes, and stay with me because this is a very busy chart here, but if there are no changes, so $2 million today that this couple has, if they continue to make $18,000 a year contribution over the next 5 years, and their bucket was able to grow 4% a year in whatever investment strategy they're using, they would have $2.6 million in their 401k. Well, again, based on their Social Security being $62,000 a year, their need from this money would be right around 2% a year, which is not a great percentage as far as they would still probably be able to make a decent level of return above what their withdrawals were. So if they did that, and again, no conversions or tax strategies, if they made that additional 3% a year net after their distributions come out, and they did that for the 10 years between age 65 and when their RMDs would start at age 75, that $2.6 million, even though they're taking from it, because it's growing 3% a year, is actually going to balloon up to a little over $3.5 million. And at their RMD age, they're going to be in a position where they're going to have 75, or at age 75, $143,000 that they are forced to take out, plus the taxable portion of their Social Security at $62,000 a year, which right now would be a little over $52,000. So they would be at like $195,000 of taxable income. And the question is, what do you think that tax rate is going to be on that $195,000 today? So again, obviously some impact here from inflation. Inflation is going to bring those brackets up. It's going to raise the top threshold for some of these. But what we do not know here is the impact of the amount of debt we're accumulating, the amount of income that the government is not having to pay for all the things, adjustments to things like Social Security and Medicare that I'm sure will have some impact on the tax situation 15 years from now. Because if we continue on the trajectory we're on, we're going to have a position where even though 1981's numbers look ridiculous right now, we may have to return back to a situation like this just to handle the annual expenses that the government is incurring, because we're already overspending that by a pretty large dollar figure today, and that's only going to increase over time. So as we look at this, we need to be aware of the impact, even though you look at it and in this situation you say, well, gosh, I'm making $120,000 a year. Why would I do conversions while I'm working? Because that goes against the age-old story of once I get to retirement, I'm going to show less income. Maybe not. Again, we have a lot of clients today that are in a position where on paper they're showing a higher taxable income than they ever have during their lifetime because of forced distributions at their RMD age, even when they don't need it. They've not got any debts, their lifestyle expenses are not extravagant, but they're forced to show a taxable income. And lucky for them, we're at a time where tax brackets are relatively low compared to where they've been. But if you're in this position like this particular couple, you may not be so lucky at a time where, if you're like them, you may show $200,000 on paper, even if you don't need it. And the question becomes, how much of that $200,000 are you going to keep? So as we look at this, Part of the job that we have is having these type of conversations, but again, in scope of everything else that you have going on. Because I have a lot of people that will say, well, John, help me build a tax strategy. Well, again, there are people that do that and they do that a la carte. For us though, there's more that goes into it than just the conversion decisions. It's about what buckets do we need to look at leveraging conversions most? How do we make sure that our risk range is appropriate considering the income that we may need now and in the future? And then where are the best places to pull that from that may help us in the overall process of tax planning and tax strategy when we look at all the things that you need from this money. Because any proper plan that you have is going to be driven by what's in this box first, the goals and objectives that you have, and then how that filters through all 5 of these areas. You need to be aware of the impact of not just one of these, but all 5 of these and how you can make the best decision considering the bucket and hopefully all those things moving in the same direction at the same time. So if you've not really had a planning conversation, maybe you do things yourself and you're just trying to figure out how can I maybe make that transition. I need to maybe ask some questions and see whether this could be something that makes sense for me or not. Again, below this video, you're going to see a link that will pull up our calendar. I would encourage you to pick a time, have a conversation with us here at Blue Ridge Wealth Planners, because again, we're used to having these type of conversations. Most brokerage firms or money managers may not have any conversation with you about the taxable nature of your buckets other than just finding out what type of account they need to open to move your money in. It needs to go deeper than that. We need to make sure that we have an awareness of where we are today, where we could be in the future, and how we need to make decisions to try to hopefully help you keep as much of this money as you can. So click a time below. We look forward to talking to you. If you do have any questions on this video, I would encourage you to leave some comments below. We'll respond back to those as much as we can, but obviously the more relevant information to you is going to come in a one-on-one conversation that we can have confidentially, whether it's in person, virtually. We're happy to have it either way and see how we can potentially help you with what you put away and making the best decisions that you can. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that this has been beneficial to you. We look forward to sharing more information like this with you in the future. So if you want to share this with others, subscribe to our channel. We'll be sure to get you the content that we have coming out when it's available. And as always, we hope this has been something that helps you make sense of your situation and leads you to making good decisions.